I just want you to know I practiced this word about 20 times to make sure that I did not mispronounce it.
I have a question. Has anyone ever said with all due respect and then not followed up with a zinger?
His side of the bed. If I come in and I'm on the other side, he will move it. Yeah, that's it.
Which side do you like? With all due respect, you make a good point.
Cheery Oreos! Toasted Oreos!
Mute. He's muted.
I love what he's saying. He doesn't need sounds.
You're so small, squishing your head, Joseph.
You can.
Do it with me, Joe.
With all due respect, you really do look handsome, Bruce. Cheery Oreos! Toasted Oreos!
Look at you. You are insane.
How did I do that?
How did I do
that? You just made the intro reel. Yes, you did.
You're insane.
Well, welcome everybody to CoronaTV. Happy Monday. It is February 8th. It is the day after the Super Bowl. Whether you love him or hate him, you gotta respect him. Tom Brady has just won the Super Bowl again. It's a hell of a story. And I gotta tell you, look, I don't really love football. I mean, I love football, the round kind, the soccer kind. I'm not really a lover of American football, as we would have called it in South Africa. But I do gravitate towards the Giants because, New York, Connecticut, etc. And so therefore I have to hate the Patriots. That's my job, to hate the Patriots, and therefore Bill Belichick, and therefore Tom Brady. But once I heard Tom Brady on Howard Stern, that interview, that 2-hour, 40-minute interview, how can you do anything else other than love this guy and what he's achieved in his lifetime? So there's gonna be little pepperings of Super Bowl conversation on today's show for sure. Sally Hogshead, who you saw in the intro, was actually on the Today Show today talking about the ads, and I'm going to talk about the ads as well. Why not? Well, let's start off with the bad news first. The bad news first is this is the reverse hockey stick, I guess, or maybe it's the bad hockey stick. But I don't know what's happening with my weight. I mean, I've put on again, I don't know, 2+ pounds, creeping up to 190. And for those of you that don't know the story of fat blogging, this began in 2005, in the early days of blogging and podcasting, where I would share my weight every Monday. The whole idea, I called it weight loss by community, because you can run, but you can't hide when your community wills you to succeed. And so I'm doing it again now every single Monday. And I did not like what the scale told me, but there was nothing I could do other than share it with you. So we will see what happens next week. A better not hit 190. Well, today is Laugh and Get Rich Day. I'm not really sure what that means, except for the fact maybe if you laugh, if you love life, if you're happy, that is one way to get rich, and maybe not getting rich the traditional route, the literal route, right, through monetary gain, but maybe your life will be richer because you are happy, because you are smiling, because you are laughing. Well, it's no laughing matter that we have Dr. Karen Freberg in the studio, in the house. She is, well, you'll hear all about her, but she's got her own hashtag SMProf. Not only is she an associate professor in strategic communications at the University of Louisville, an adjunct professor at WVU's IMC graduate online program, but she wrote the textbook that I am teaching from at WVU. So I had to meet her face to face. She's also an award-winning author of that said aforementioned book and others in the category. Just to give you a quick heads up, Michael Farmer and George Tannenbaum got a real strong Madison Avenue flavor and flair, and then David Burkus on Thursday discussing teams and leadership and team leadership. And then on Friday, our health and wellness and fitness themed show, Peter Shankman, David Rendell, Jeremy Tucker, Lee Oden, and my sister, Sharon Jaffe Nielsen. And they'll be talking about whatever they want to talk about. They don't have to talk about health and wellness, but all five of them have that common theme. And so I figured via osmosis, there would be some kind of synergistic magic happening. A little bit of a Clubhouse update for you. Today, I continue the series of brands on Clubhouse, making the case. And then tomorrow, I continue talking about pivoting, the reinvention of brands, careers, and life. And then on Wednesday, part of my commitment to the startup community, we're actually doing Wednesday's one. I actually put in 2 weeks' time, but what we're actually going to be talking about on Wednesday is parenting as a founder and how to kind of find that work-life balance. So just a little bit of a heads up. Let's do birthdays quickly. Mr. Brad Behrens, Charles Ruderman, Tim Gowdy, an ex-South African who worked at Coca-Cola for the longest time. David Art Wales, Laura Pollock, happy birthday to you guys. On Sunday, Grad Con, not my son Aaron Jaffe, but a different Aaron Jaffe. Bill Green, I don't want to forget about you. Scott Goodwin, today, Warren Spiro, Ken Dickens, Chris Backus. And then on LinkedIn, Anthony Gordon, Aldo Gnocchi. What a name, Aldo Gnocchi. I mean, it's delicious, isn't it? Hoover Liu. And then on Sunday, and finally today, we've got Anna Papadopoulos, David Kirby, just scanning to see if any previous guests are there. I don't see anyone, but Carl Waldman, Trevor Schaff. Happy birthday, guys. Have an awesome, awesome day today, or if it was on the weekend, hope you had a great one. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Super Bowl. Why not? It seemed like the right thing to do to have a little soliloquy about the events and give you a little bit of a point of view. You know, I have to tell you, every year when the Stupid Bowl, as I call it, comes around, I try and act like a real life consumer, a human, when it comes to the commercials. In other words, I'm drunk in a room with a bunch of people talking loudly, okay, screaming and competing with each other and the sound of the TV. I try not to seek out the commercials beforehand, but at the same time, I won't avoid them if they happen to be discussed or featured in the news. I'm always amazed at how little we actually remember from the Super Bowl, not even 24 hours after the event. So try it right now. List as many of the commercials from the big game that you can remember. Try it right now. Put in the comments if you want, knowing that the complete list is well over 50. This year, of course, was very different. Most of us watched in the smallest of groups imaginable, and some even alone. Now, if you think about it, it was the perfect year to really focus on the commercials and attempt to justify why advertisers spent $5.5 million on the media portion, and who knows how much more paying for all the borrowed interest from celebrity cameos. My take could probably be described or summarized in 2 words: safe and lazy. A few key points. Number 1, the number of commercials featuring masks, face masks, was minimal to negligible. What a shame. Number 2, Budweiser apparently took out an ad to tell us that they were sitting out this year's Super Bowl and donating the money towards vaccine awareness and confidence. Now, strangely enough, I never saw the ad in question. Did you? Did you see it? But I did actually see a whole lot of Budweiser and Anheuser-Busch related ads. So not really sure that that message came through clearly. Finally, I definitely noticed the Mountain Dew commercial that offered $1 million to the first person who correctly tweeted how many bottles of Mountain Dew were in the commercial. I loved the idea, and I actually sent in about 5 tweets myself. But here's the problem. I have no clue if I won, or quite frankly, if anyone else won. There's been no response, no announcements. In fact, their Twitter account is still littered with spammy tweets from the brand, including legalese and a ridiculous hashtag of MTNDEW Major Melon, whatever, sigh. For me, the big winner was the 5-second Reddit commercial that made me pause, rewind, pause, take a screenshot, and share on social media. Smart and on brand, especially after the whole Wall Street bets, GameStop, Robinhood fiasco. Did you see that ad? Did you notice it? Because obviously it would have been over in the blink of an eye. More importantly, what did you think of the big game? Why not join us on the after show today and we can discuss further. So that's my take on the Super Bowl. And I'm very, very interested, obviously, to hear what you have to say and hear your thoughts. But right now, I'm honored to, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention, this was the actual Reddit commercial. So here you have a little screenshot of what you saw at the beginning. And then this is what the, the 4.5 second actually indicated. Wow, this actually worked. If you're reading this, it means our bet paid off. Big game spots are expensive, so we couldn't buy a full one, but we were inspired and decided to spend our entire marketing budget on 5 seconds of airtime. One thing we learned from our communities last week is that underdogs can accomplish just about anything when they come together around a common idea. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the reason finance textbooks have to add a chapter on tendies. Or, in the case of Karen Freberg, maybe social media textbooks will be adding this case study as well. Maybe you'll help I don't even know, I'm not so good on Reddit, Superb Owl, teach the world about the majesty of owls. Maybe you'll even pause this 5 second ad. I guess that means subreddit. Powerful things happen when people rally around something they really care about, and there's a place for that. It's called Reddit. So I cannot wait to hear what Karen has to say about this particular example. Karen Freberg is an associate professor in strategic communications at the University of Louisville, where she teaches researchers and consults in social media strategy, public relations, and crisis communication. She's also an adjunct professor at WVU's IMC graduate online program. Freeberg is an award-winning author and has written several books, including Social Media for Strategic Communications. Her latest book, Discovering Public Relations: An Introduction to Creative and Strategic Practices, came out in August 2020. Freeberg has coordinated and advised various companies on the areas of social media pedagogy and certification programs, including Cannes Lions, where she is co-chair of the Cannes Lions Educator Summit. She is the real deal, and she's with us right now. Let's welcome her on the show. Karen, welcome to Corona TV.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I'm honored to be here.
I had to get through so much just to get here, but I'm dying to find out what you thought of everything. So did you watch the big game?
I did, yes. It's actually something that I have all of my classes watch. I tell them, yes, I know it's a hard homework assignment. You got to watch it. And then, I'm going to have my classes starting tomorrow and then Wednesday to share what they saw in terms of trends, what they liked, what they didn't like. And so it's one of the great things that I love about teaching during the spring semester, to be able to kind of see what brands are doing well, what are brands doing that they could maybe improve upon next time. So yeah, I had a chance to do my own homework that I assigned yesterday for the big game.
Well, I'm giving you homework right now, which is to find out what you thought of the ads, particularly to what extent brands utilized digital innovation and specifically social media.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how brands change their social strategy, every year. And so I was thinking actually there'd be a lot more integration with TikTok, because TikTok has been on the minds of course, Gen Z and other, companies and brands. So I was actually surprised with how little I saw. And I thought particularly Miracle-Gro, the lawn commercial that happened with John Travolta, and he was kind of practicing TikTok. I thought this was like a missed opportunity to create a challenge, to tie in TikTok, because I actually looked on TikTok to see if they had incorporated anything. And I saw Pepsi and Doritos, they had their challenges, of course, for the big game. But I thought this would have been a really good opportunity to have someone like John Travolta, who is known for his dancing, to try a challenge, to launch it, and then, kind of continue on that. So I thought there was some missed opportunities for cross integration across platforms, but I do have some winners that I thought really did awesome, and then there were others that I wasn't sure what they were trying to do, during their social media.
I'm not sure they were either, but I'd love to hear your winners.
I have to say M&M's. I really liked their commercial, but I felt the social media team for M&M's really did a good job of engaging with their audiences. So I try to look to see who has kind of the winning combination of strong ad campaign that kind of touches your emotions in some way that's very innovative and memorable. I'm able to recognize and recall.
So I want to put a pin in that for a second, because you were actually featured in that M&M commercial. So let's play that commercial and then we can discuss that.
Okay.
I feel bad for kicking your seat on purpose.
I'm sorry for mansplaining. That's when a man...
I know what it is. We should have just told you it's a boy.
I wish you didn't have to hear all that.
Sorry I called you Karen.
That's my name.
Sorry your name is Karen.
I promise I will not eat any more of your friends.
Really?
Okay, it might happen one more time.
Well, you are smiling, so that's important.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm sorry your name is Karen. But I don't even know how to ask the question, so I'm just gonna which is how is it to know that your name is Karen with all these things going on? Has this actually impacted your life in any way, shape, or form, or do you just smile about it?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that. I mean, ever since, Karen has kind of been part of pop culture, maybe not necessarily for the best reasons. It's kind of like, oh, my poor name. But then I kind of have made it a joke when I've met people. And I'm like, yeah, my name is Karen Freberg. By the way, I'm a nice Karen, and just, people are like laughing around it. So I feel like, life is too short. You got to laugh about it. And my students think it's so hilarious. They think, oh, our professor's Karen. And so they just get a kick out of it. But then I'm like, yeah, but I'm a nice Karen. So
you are a nice Karen. But by the way, that M&M's commercial, what was so interesting about it is they took on a few pretty controversial, or let's just say very meaty topics. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if you think of these gender reveals gone wrong was responsible for California wildfires. Mm-hmm. And so they went there, and I actually thought that they straddled it fairly well. And they were maybe the only brand that actually tackled any issue of substance or debate in the whole game. So I would agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I just felt too that, one of the things that I think is really important for brands to realize with the Super Bowl is that, there's a lot of emotions that are in play. And if you're able to, most of the time when you do see a lot of commercials that are being played, it really taps into humor. And M&M's has always had kind of the humorous, funny commercials. And of course they had Dan Levi, who's part of it. And so there was like a buzz surrounding it, but I didn't really know what to expect until I saw it. And then I just kind of sat back. I'm like, okay. But what I liked, or they really again continue the conversation point. So I actually tweeted at M&M's. I'm like, okay, I see M&M's. I see what you did there with Karen. And then they responded, oh, we see you too. And there were a few people in my network that were kind of going, they need to send you some, packets of M&Ms to you. And so they're actually going to, so I can share some with my students in my classes. So it all worked out.
By the way, so a couple of best practices there. One, their social media response team were ready for it. Number two, for sure, they had thought through the scenario that people whose name was Karen would actually respond to them, and so they had a plan for that, and the ability to send product, which is sampling and part of on strategy in terms of the idea of sharing. Made so much sense and continues the conversation, because no doubt when you get the product, you hand it out in class, you take photos, you'll be adding to that conversation, that social media conversation online.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to see which brands did have a commercial that were kind of, not all brands actually interacting with audiences. Brands were interacting with there is kind of a missed opportunity if you're not interacting with your audience. It's like the thing that I kind of saw that I was actually shocked about it. Like when you consider this is part of the Nick Jonas commercial for diabetes. It was Dexcom, I think. If you go to their Twitter page, in their bio, they actually say this is not an active account. And I looked at that. I'm like, okay, I got to tell my students, like, this is 2021. You have to, like, especially have such a high profile placement in a Super Bowl and you're not active in social where the conversations are emerging. I mean, they just were getting burned by a lot of the social media professionals that I know. They're like, this is 2021. You can't not have a presence and engage. This is such a missed opportunity. So that was one that I thought, like, M&M's was a great example, but I thought Dexicom really missed the mark on social.
It's unbelievable to me still. And I remember this even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the number of spots that didn't have a URL at the time. So I'm talking about 15, 20 years ago. Then a call to action. So it's one thing to show your website. It's another thing to give people a reason and an incentive to go online. And now with social, it just seemed like it was almost, in fact, with exception of the Reddit spot was brilliant. It didn't need a call to action, but absolutely took advantage of what happened last week. I mean, that's quick, that's fast moving and fast thinking, quick thinking. But the only one was the Mountain Dew one that said, go and tweet and win $1 million. And unfortunately, I think, I went back and looked at their account today and they're just, they were just spamming every, 5 minutes or so, another, little pithy, witty comment about the ad. But where is the response? Where is, surprise couponing or product sampling? Nothing. So that was a pity.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there was very limited options, like that the brands kind of had in their advertisements for call to actions. And I do look at that as well, because you do usually have people saying, oh, here's the hashtag that we use, or here's a QR code to scan. There's usually something where you're able to kind of track based on what people saw, on the commercial, like what actions they did. And so the only two that I thought were interesting and around to kind of track people's, kind of behavior from watching, the commercial on TV to social was with Sesame Street and DoorDash to see how many people took orders, and then how much was raised for Sesame Workshop. So I thought that would be kind of interesting to kind of look at the overall impact of that commercial. But then the other one I liked in particular was Indeed. That they were able to kind of share the powerful stories about people losing jobs and looking for jobs, or, especially for us, Joseph, you and I, are educators. And so we have students starting their career or kind of looking to move up. How are they battling the job market? But Indeed actually was posting the various openings on their Twitter feed for people to apply, so they could kind of track to see how many people were clicking on them and stuff. But even with those cases, there could have been, I think, in my opinion, a stronger call to action, in some way. So I think that they, as you said earlier in your monologue, brands kind of were there, but they didn't kind of cross over. But I actually did write a blog post today, kind of with my summary of some of my thoughts on the Super Bowl. And I actually feel that the best placement didn't actually happen during the Super Bowl.
And pray tell, what does that mean?
Well, there's a brand and a well-known celebrity that we all know who has a gin company that did a video that I thought, and I put it out there before the Super Bowl. I'm like, this is going to win because they actually deserve the ad time. Because this was probably, I felt, kind of the best kind of combination of everything that we're talking about.
So should we show that spot?
We should. I think we should.
The last 10 months, Diddy, David, and me, Ryan Reynolds, have been hard at work on an industry first. A daring combination of De Leon tequila, Hague Club whiskey, Aviation American gin, and natural flavors found in both Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Made to be the one cocktail everyone can enjoy this Sunday.
Here's to you guys.
Okay, Ryan, cheers.
Jesus mother. Damn it, that's so fucking gross.
Ryan, that shit tastes like ass feet.
Ryan, this is not gonna work. Why did we think that we could do this? Seriously.
That's why we got leaders to the mixologist.
By the way, this shrimp is fucking disgusting.
So your classic guerrilla marketing, hijack the Super Bowl and get people talking about something that is around the show, off Broadway versus, the main attraction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just feel that's kind of been what I think has made specifically Ryan Reynolds a very effective marketer, that he's been able to kind of find pinpoints where he can own the narrative and own the conversation in space, where in the Super Bowl, so many people are creating, like various things to kind of compete and kind of own that timeline. But if you can do anything, as Joseph, with your, expertise in disruptive technology and disruptive innovation, like if you're able to kind of slightly kind of pivot, say, okay, we're going to own this space over here, you have everyone's attention if you do it really well and effectively. And so I just saw that, I'm like, this is awesome.
I do think on another level, what Ryan Reynolds is doing is quite superb and quite unique, because he's basically saying, who needs an ad agency? I'll be, and it's not even borrowed interest because he's the owner, right? So it's he's the front man, he's the spokesperson, he's taking risks, he's being self-effacing, but also being very transparent in terms of giving you an insight, a portal, into his own passion and his project, and it's really quite transparent. This whole approach, and he seems to be more creative than anything that the agency world can come up with.
Yeah, he has a great team. His senior brand manager at American Aviation Gin, Adrian Molina, is one of the best people that I know. I got connected with him last year, and he spoke to my class, and he was definitely a class favorite with just his innovation and strategy. And he basically was able to lay out to the students, here's kind of where what we do for a brand. We know this works. We know that this is something that we can do. And it's been refreshing to kind of hear that fresh perspective that is taken, because I think absolutely, Joseph, like they have been coming up with some of the best ideas. I mean, just some things that you kind of sit back and you're like, no, that's good. Like that's out there. It's creative. It's memorable. And I like the fact too, with this particular initiative, he's partnering with, Diddy and David Beckham, but they have a purpose behind it. Like they're recognizing, hey, that we talk a lot about small businesses. We talk a lot about it, but here's an industry of group of people that have been severely impacted with what's going on. We're going to go and help them. And I think that's really brilliant.
3 owners. I mean, it's true. So it is the very antithesis of what you saw with Scott's and what you saw with Bud Light, with tapping into their previous ads. And there was at least one other example of just I would say flagrant overuse of borrowed interest through celebrities. And it's it seems to be like a formula that people think is a good idea, but it isn't. It's absolutely, it's like gauche. It's over the top, and the brand gets lost in the shuffle of all of these celebrities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely saw a lot more celebrities in play this year, where last year was kind of the rise of the creators and influencers that you would see on social. So there's a lot more emphasis there. I mean, Sabra Hummus, for example, had like a whole thing on influencers and TikTok stars. Whereas I was trying to sit back and look, in this group of commercials and ads and campaigns, and I thought I did not really see anything related to that, but I saw a lot of celebrities, and I realized, well, maybe this was one way for them to make money, because the entertainment industry, besides TV and streaming shows, have been non-existent. So, but I agree. Like, I thought there was missed opportunities there for them to really utilize maybe fresh talent. I mean, there's so many talented creators that are happening on social. I think it would have been a missed opportunity to reach and engage, the audiences with those individuals.
Well, now you are a very famous social media professor and author, because not only are you interacting with M&Ms, but you actually have an interesting connection to Ryan Reynolds as well, don't you?
Yes, it's probably the one thing, like if I tell my students my background and my experience in the field, if I mention, yes, I've interacted with Ryan and he follows me on Twitter, that's the only thing my students think about. They're like, Dr. Freeberg, that's important. So I've always been a fan of his. I think he does great movies. I'm a big Deadpool fan. And it was actually right after the Peloton commercial that he did that I just thought this was brilliant. That was like kind of my first introduction to, and then of course his feud with Hugh Jackman. But it was like that December where I was tweeting. I was actually in my house and I, had my phone nearby. I feel like I'm attached to my phone. And I remember getting this notification from Twitter saying Ryan Reynolds has followed you. And my initial impression, Joseph, was, oh, poor Ryan. This is a fake bot. He has to deal with these all the time. But then I kind of sat back and looked again and I saw, oh, wait, that's the verified check mark that you see on Twitter. So that's him. And so I acted and responded accordingly. I freaked out, but ever since then, I do kind of interact and, on social, I give him praise, for all the stuff that he's doing. And so we've been able to kind of go back and forth where in my PR book, I actually incorporated a lot of what he was doing in Aviation Gin with Adrian Molina into my book. And he actually has a copy of the book. And one thing I wanted to make sure to point out to him was he was mentioned 11 times in my PR book, while Hugh Jackman was only mentioned once. So I'm like, see, if you were going to, weigh the feud that you have with Hugh Jackman, you're mentioned more in this book than he is. So there you go. But he's been great.
I want to just touch on one more aspect, and then I want to talk about education and the future of education. But it strikes me that the reason, you'll recall Bill Bernbach once said, safe advertising is the riskiest advertising of all. And, what Ryan Reynolds does and what he's doing with Aviation Gin, I don't even think that he views it as risky. But there's an element of self-deprecation, and it just strikes me that I guess when you're the owner, when you're at the rock face, when you're actually playing with your own brand, probably the barrier to entry or the bar is lowered in terms of that perceived risk. And I wonder, and so I want to ask you this question, if the reason why innovation, disruption, even creativity for the most part, has been stifled or stymied, certainly in the last 10 plus years, is because there aren't enough owners that are prepared to put their ownership at stake when it comes, and I'm talking about the whole supply chain, from shareholders all the way through to agency partners that are prepared to take some risk, share some risk in exchange to produce that kind of creative that breaks through the clutter.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel that a lot of agencies in the fields that I'm in social media and PR marketing, there's a lot of levels, and there's like a lot of steps that people have to kind of go through to get an idea approval, like then finally to legal, and then kind of going back and forth with the client. And there's just a lot of steps that you have to kind of go through and by able to approve the idea to get launched. It's completely different than what you originally had proposed, where I think what has made Ryan's team so successful is that it's a small group, but they all come into a room, they bounce on ideas saying, we'll do this and go for that. And I think that kind of agility and adaptability that is available in fostering innovative needed. And for me, I've taken those lessons and I've thought, okay, what are ways in which I can kind of approach this in my own business and best practices for my students? How can we kind of embrace that kind of mentality so we can be creative, can think outside of the box? And I do also think, Joseph, that one thing that is kind of challenging to not just agencies, but as we kind of segue to education, is to be out doing so, get first person to do it, because it's like, well, what happens if you fail? I mean, some of the best lessons that we have in life are when you fail, but you want to kind of say work, but then what can we do next is taking that, as you said, that risk about trying something new, but to be able to be, confident in taking risks and understand what you will be able to take from those risks.
So the idea of risk, right? When we talk about risk, and risk is relative, what are a couple of the things that you would impart on your students to be able to take, to push the boundaries, but recognize that they're coming into the workforce at a pretty junior level where they're not being incentivized or encouraged to, to think outside the box?
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. And one of the things that I've tried to do in my classes was, I love the Matrix movie. And so what I've realized since I'm getting old, my students, some of them have not seen the Matrix. So if they don't know what the Matrix is or the series, I'm like, okay, pop culture homework, you have to watch this, because I love the scene where there's this little girl that says, yeah, there's no spoon. And I do feel that there are artificial barriers, like students, professionals put up saying, well, we can't do this. And my answer back is like, well, why not? Why not? Where's it written out? And they're like, oh, well, there's rules against that. And I'm like, well, show me, and there's a lot of things that we kind of limit ourselves from doing because I think that there's a rule saying we can't do it. And especially when it comes to creative and social media practices. So I actually encourage my students to think really big. And I have designed my classes so that it is very much real world focused, where students will be able to get hands-on activities where they get to see, okay, here's what social media is really like. And I do that, Joseph, just so they understand the ins and outs, but they also have experience to get a seat at the table to pitch these ideas to clients. And so we've had clients for my classes ranging from our local minor league baseball team here in Louisville, the Louisville Bats, who've been fantastic to work with. But we've been able to work with big brands like the Breeders' Cup, Facebook, and even last fall, we were able to work with Chipotle. And giving the students that opportunity to share their ideas at a senior level will give them the confidence as they enter the workplace and kind of see what kind of situation they want to work in. If they come into a situation where listening to their ideas, it may be a time to say, well, maybe there's another opportunity for me elsewhere where my ideas will be accepted. So I try to give the students a wide range of experience at the technical, but also managerial level, because they need to have the full spectrum to understand the whole scope of things. They need to be informed. Where I see one of the things that some programs do that I think is very limiting is they basically train students to be like worker bees. Like, okay, write all these tweets, write all these email pitches, write all these reports, but they don't allow them to think big. They don't allow them to think, okay, what's my big idea? How would I look at it from an eagle eye perspective and drill down and think creatively and innovatively? And we're seeing more brands and agencies kind of focus on looking for talent that way. But it's been kind of interesting to kind of see how it's evolved over the years and how education has kind of adapted to meet those expectations.
The one thing obviously that is a part of our life now, and it's not going away anytime soon, is this remote, this work from home, this virtual landscape. I mean, we're talking to each other in a virtual, remote sort of way as well. But how has it been for you in terms of going from in-person or in-classroom teaching to now this being an online instructor? I'm an online instructor for WVU. I don't generally see my students or meet them unless they show up to office hours. I've even encouraged them to come to I have one student that's come to several of our Zoom after shows. Maybe you'll see her today as well, because I want to bring this to life. And I keep saying to them, bring your submissions to life, bring your assignments to life with multimedia, with, this is social media. You have the ability to use all of these exhibits that are just there for you in the public domain. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about maybe some of the challenges associated with going completely and fully online.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I would have to say that my transition to online this past year has actually been pretty seamless. And I credit WVU for that, because I had been teaching for them since 2009. And what I found is my online teaching informed my in-person teaching, my in-person teaching informed. So it was like a full circle. And so when we went online, I realized very quickly, like, okay, I get to incorporate my online teaching experiences to my classes at U of L. And I felt that the big thing that I learned was, one, online teaching. Many people think online teaching is easier than in person. It's not. Like, you have to do a lot more prep. You have to do a lot more work ahead of time to kind of say, okay, how would I explain this concept to students in a way that doesn't drain them? You know, like if I gave them like a 3-hour recorded lecture to watch, they'd be like, Dr. Freberg, what are you trying to do? Kill us? And so I would have like these micro lessons. But I think, as you said, Joseph, like the interaction was key. So I actually did everything in real time. I had regular Zoom meeting classes. I would check in with students, see how they were doing. And that really made a difference. I would say the challenge that we had is in Louisville, Kentucky, a lot of our students are paying their own way through school. So they're working maybe 1 or 2 jobs, you know, while going to school. And a lot of them lost those jobs. They were laid off, and pretty immediately. So the added stress of like, where do I go to pay bills? How do I make sure that I'm staying on track with graduation? And oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do with internships? So the challenge for me was kind of being there as an added resource to kind of help them through some of these challenges, saying, here's some remote internships. By the way, they're paid. Here's some resources that you might want to look at, you know, that will help out, you know, kind of looking for jobs. And I felt like kind of being there as a coach, a mentor, and an added, you know, person for support was something that I felt really was, you know, challenging, that kind of was thrust upon us. But since then, what I found is by taking that approach, and again, we kind of were in this hybrid model in the fall, I actually felt at ease, you know, teaching online like I did before. But I actually had my best student evaluations for my graduate PR class that I ever had in my history teaching, and it was all remote. It was all online. So I felt it went over really well. And so I think too, working in social media, if I don't know how to do technology, then I'd be in big trouble. So, but those were just some of the challenges that I faced.
You've been actually very encouraged by the quality of the students and the potential in terms of entering into the workforce. Talk a little bit about where you see the future heading from a social media standpoint. Our craft, our profession, you know, as social media people, are we in truly good hands, or the best hands in terms of this next generation? Or ultimately, you know, is it a combination perhaps of these entry level students coming in now, kind of growing up, being so native in terms of their exposure and their reliance, or just the fact that this is like the air they breathe, versus the mix of, you know, people like you and I that have been in the space for decades now, and have that strategic foundation and working experience to bring to the table?
Yeah, no, I think the future is bright, actually, you know, for education, because I think what's been interesting is I've been teaching social media now for 10 years, and the amount of resources and opportunities that we have, not just only for educators, but for our students to really learn and grow in the craft now, is just truly light years ahead of where we were back in 2011. I remember when I helped co-create and teach a social media class during my PhD program, there was really not much out there. I mean, there were some books, but not much. The access to tools to actually do some of the assignments that we were, you know, asked to do. Some of these analytic companies would kind of laugh, like, why would we talk to educators when you're not a Fortune 500 company that has millions of dollars, you know, at the disposal to buy these listening tools? And so we have more certifications now. We have lots of abilities to share with our students real insights that will help them in their jobs. But I think most importantly, what I really encourage, Joseph, is that for educators who are teaching social, we're becoming more aligned and connected with the industry. And you mentioned before of the hashtag SMProfs. I actually helped build a community just for social media professors. And so we actually have a group on Facebook, the Social Media Professors Community, which we have over 2,000 members now from all over the world, all people who are teaching, researching, and working in social. And the ultimate goal that I think I feel this group really kind of offers is to be able to bridge the gap between what is being covered in classes versus what is being taught, emphasized and expected in the industry. And I think we didn't really always have that communication between, practitioners who are in the depths of working in social and what's being taught. And I guess one of the challenges that we've had in education, well, continuing to have a challenge is the state of higher ed. Where are we preparing our students for what's expected? And I think educators, and I know there's a few great educators that I know, like Matt Cushion and Carolyn Kim and Karen Sutherland, Amanda Reed. Like, there's so many professors that are basically, they kind of wear two hats. They're thinking of a practitioner, but they're a researcher and teacher as well. And they kind of bridge those qualifications together. So they are kind of this modern day professor. And I think we're seeing more of that. I think that we're going to be seeing more emphasis on the practicality of our work, both on the research and teaching side, but how we can tie that into the industry. So I think that's a challenge that we're going to have to face in this new decade and beyond. But I'm very optimistic. I feel that, with students coming out, like, they are getting more training, they're realizing that there's certain skills that they have. But I think one challenge that I do see, Joseph, is that people do, there was this whole conversation earlier that I saw kind of emerge. There was this Forbes article that talked about side hustles that people could kind of embark on. And one of them was like, oh yeah, social media is easy. It's a side hustle, where there's a lot of work that comes into it. And we have to wear multiple hats. And that's one thing I tell my students, and even educators, like, it's the hardest class to teach, but it's also the most rewarding. But you have so many duties assigned to you, like content creator, writer, researcher, crisis manager, customer service, graphic designer, video, analytics. Like, there's so many tools that we have to master. So it can't, it's not easy. It's you have to have a strategic foundation. You have to have a strong foundation in an area to be able to apply into utilizing each of these areas and specializations to our work. So we still need to work on the perception of our field in many ways.
Well, look, and it also helps when you have certain famous friends, like, Jason Falls, for example, like in your backyard. So that helps too.
Oh, Jason is fantastic. Like, we first got connected, and I was definitely fangirling when I first saw him in our local conference that we used to have, for digital marketing. And he's one of the best. But I want to tell this short story, because I tell Jason that he actually has to call on his free bourbon for the rest of his life, because he helped me out tremendously about 8 years ago. We were actually at the Integrate West Virginia. He was speaking and I was speaking, and we were both coming back on the same flight path to Louisville. But we went to Philadelphia, and our plane, our flight from Philadelphia to Louisville was canceled. And I was kind of, trying to keep calm, but I was kind of stressed because the next day I was actually flying to Barcelona for a conference. So when I found out that our flight was canceled, I'm like, okay, what's plan B, plan C? How do I drive from Philadelphia to Louisville to make sure I get back to my flight? So I was basically, focusing on this. But Jason, he, pulled out his phone and he's like, Karen, I have enough miles on Southwest to get us both tickets. And yeah, we'll be back in Louisville tonight. And I just was like, Jason? So I basically told him, you have free bourbon from me, for the rest of your life. And so he still hasn't called it, but he's just, I tell him that for me is a true friend and colleague and influencer. So he's featured in my PR book, but yeah, he's awesome.
That is a great story. And I know I can see that he has liked the show already. I'm not sure if he had to jump off, but we'd know if he was watching because he would comment, but I'm sure he has been at some point. He was on CoronaTV. We actually did an episode called Corona Cocktails, where We were having, I think he was having bourbon and I was having scotch. So the conversation was free flowing. You know, Karen, what's great about what you spoke about just now is the fact that there are two things going on. One is, and I love how you kind of silenced the side hustle, you know, boosters, recognizing that just because it's easy, right? It's easy to tweet, just like it's easy to drunk tweet, but I wouldn't advise it or recommend it. It is one of my biggest peeves, which is tactics in search of strategy, solutions to non-existing problems. But I feel when we take the best of the old, which is strategy, right, and creativity and something that is classic and timeless and universal, and we combine it with the best of the new, which is these new ways to connect, engage, interact in these real-time, transparent, and communal shared fashions, that's when the magic happens. That combined with what you said, which is, you know, you look at me, not only have I written books on social media as well, but through CoronaTV, which is, you know, you can teach streaming, you can teach a student about what streaming is and live is and experimentation, or you can actually say, I'm doing it right now. I am the case study, you know, good, bad, and ugly. So I think that's a very interesting insight from your side, which is the typical academic professor is not necessarily that the same prototype as someone who is a social media educator and professional.
Right. No, I mean, and I think that's been something where even for my own journey that I've kind of tried to balance a little bit, because when I was actually on the job market, I actually had a few programs when they talked to me, they would kind of sit back and they're like, we don't know where to put you. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? They're like, well, you're an academic, you have a PhD, but you know the industry. So it's like, are you an academic? Or are you a practitioner? And I'm like, couldn't we kind of be in the middle? Like, shouldn't an academic be informed about what's going on in practice and vice versa? Like, shouldn't a practitioner know what's been done through research? And so I've really tried to kind of brand that my perspective. And it is a different approach. I know that there have been a few people that are like, well, you need to pick one category or the other. I'm like, well, I can't. I don't like being put in boxes myself. So that's why I kind of don't like my students to feel like they have to be put in boxes. I'm like, well, I'm going to make my own box, you know, or area. Like, I don't want to, you know, I want to be able to evolve, be agile, adapt to the growing trends. But that's kind of served me really well, Joseph, because I've been able to kind of adapt to what the expectations are. And I feel too, I guess that's my Swedish genes too. I'm a little bit stubborn and competitive. And as a former track and field athlete, I like it when people tell me I can't do stuff. I'm like, okay, watch me, you know, so.
Well, there you go. And not many people know you are actually from Ukraine, not according to this very badly retouched photo, but you are a pretty accomplished athlete as well. I was actually, you know, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I feel like I have to, because you participated in the 2004 Olympic trials where you were a finalist. And this is even more interesting. You were in the top 10 in the US and ranked 37 in the world by the time you retired from track and field. So you certainly brought this, this shot put best practices, and now you help people take their best shot in social media.
Well, I have to say, Joseph, that Photoshop was probably the best action shot that I have ever had in competition. Because I mean, I don't know if you've seen the shot, but like, there's no glamour shots. I mean, you have the runners, you have the jumpers there; they look amazing in their action shots. Shoppers, not so much.
Well, I spent hours trying to find that Ukrainian perfect shot for you. But Karen, in the time we have left, there was something else that you feel very strongly about, and certainly we share, and that is the power of community. And it really seems that in and through this COVID reality that we're living through, that yet again, community is rearing its beautiful head in this particular case and rising and shining. So talk a little bit about the sea of community and why it is, and why now again, it is playing such an important role in our lives, personally and professionally.
Absolutely. I feel that community has always afforded us a way to make these amazing connections and relationships. And I feel social media has really been a powerful vehicle to connect with people that you might have not ever have had a chance to meet. And I've shared with my students that with like the connections that I've made through social are like the best I've ever had. And I feel as in light of everything that's been going on, like with COVID, I actually have probably made some of the best connections and made some amazing friendships in this past year. And just as a point of reference, like I feel if you looked at like one platform that really has kind of afforded me these amazing connections, it's been Twitter. I love Twitter. It's just been such a rewarding platform to be a part of. But I was able to be part of this community called Marketing Twitter. And these were some individuals who really like were behind some of the biggest brands and agencies and campaigns that you would imagine, like Adweek and Chipotle and some of these other brands like, you know, Amazon Prime. It just was amazing. And so, but what I found with that community, talking with them, like talking to each of these professionals, like they are, again, like me, like they and you, like they're human beings, and just being able to kind of talk with them, like how they're doing, what their needs are, how can we help each other, like that really kind of built a stronger connection that really has fostered into really awesome friendships. Like I'm part of several DM groups that, I mean, some of them are just hilarious, and just, it's just so important to have that human connection now, and being able to kind of see how it's really been thriving. And so some of the friendships, like everyone's kind of said, okay, as soon as everything is safe and normal again, we have to have a meetup where we're able to meet face to face. But some of the connections that I've been able to make through these communities is great. And as I mentioned too earlier, the SM Profs community, that's a community that I'm really proud of, to kind of show how we're willing to help each other. And I one of the reasons why I wanted to create that group was to have a resource that I didn't have when I was starting out, so we can actually help each other. Because sometimes in some academic professional groups and communities, people aren't helping each other, right? But this community really thrived, like in light of everything that was going on, everyone kind of forcing to be online and kind of disrupting everything. Everyone in this community in SM Profs came together, shared resources, rubrics, volunteer for guest speaking opportunities, share documents, just everything to kind of help each other. And that for me really was special to see, because I feel in many ways actions speak louder than words, and community really kind of fosters that. So community is just more important than ever.
Yeah, I found this quote that I thought really epitomized what we're discussing today, especially who said it. So the quote is, "Social media creates communities, not markets." And that was actually the late Don Schultz, who was certainly a bit of a giant in the marketing world. And I just love that quote, because ultimately it speaks to the fact that there's something deeper, richer, more enduring that's been created here versus the crass and the kind of dollars and cents, buyers and sellers coming together, ROI, bloody, bloody, blah. Karen, we have time for just one more thing, which is our Corona question. And today you are the guinea pig, because you have to kick off the first Corona question. And it's a meaty one. What has been the single best idea that you've ever come up with in your life?
Oh, this is big. Well, I would say, Joseph, like as I mentioned before, I feel that developing and fostering the community of SM Profs is probably one of the proudest ideas that came to life, because I feel that my overall goal and purpose is to make an impact on the field. That's always been something that I've wanted to do, to help others, to kind of be able to provide resources and help to people who are coming up. And I wanted to create a place where we could all win, together, how we could help out. So SM Profs really originated from actually a research idea back in 2016. And this group fostered on Facebook. We've been able to make some incredible connections. And for me, what's been very rewarding is just seeing how other professors are saying, wow, like I got the best student evaluations for how I incorporate some of the ideas and assignments that everyone shared. And they've been able to make connections. They've been able to get research ideas. And for me, that's what it's all about. For me, like that showing that impact and making a difference in people's lives and being able to kind of foster and mentor people, that for me was awesome. And I feel that idea also came about after I had, a big cup of coffee, which I feel all ideas, come from having a big, nice cup of coffee for me.
And I know that you are very recent into the wonderful world of caffeine. Well, Karen, I really, really loved not catching up with you, meeting you. I feel like you're an old friend because we probably have so many degrees of so many connections of separation. The book is called Social Media for Strategic Communication, and second edition is on its way, which is kind of exciting.
Yes.
And will be released later this year.
You are actually the first person to make that announcement. So yes, the second edition is going to be out in August. And so there's going to be a lot of new updates. So I'm really excited to see what you think. It's been a fun project, and it's been just very rewarding to see people incorporate the book all around the world. And it's still surreal for me to kind of see the book in the bookstore. I'm like, wait, that's mine. But it's definitely
awesome.
Definitely.
Anne Bowman says, I love what this woman has to say. Fantastic chat. And Manif earlier said, in talking about community, said he felt that 2020 was the year that he looked for and found his tribes. Well, we are going to go and hang out now with another tribe, another community, which is our after show community. And if you want to join, you can. You just have to type bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. And for the next 30 minutes or so, Karen and I will be hanging out and talking about community, talking about the Super Bowl, talking about teaching, talking about whatever it is that you guys want to chat about. This has been Dr. Karen Freberg, #SMProf, award-winning author. And if you want to follow her on Twitter, where she is very active, K Freeberg on Twitter, and the same on Instagram. You can connect with her on LinkedIn and find out more about her at KarenFreeberg.com or follow her blog. Karen, again, thank you for coming in. And the last word always on the show is Chuck Norris's.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe.
You're welcome.
Joseph.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.